All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give a tutorial on our topic today, which is going to be slide deck recipes with Claude Design. I will say that you're going to be along with me on this ride for a bit of an experiment because Claude Design just came out a week ago, and so we're probing the boundaries of what's possible here with this tool. I'll show a little bit about doing it with sort of the traditional version of Claude, which came out, as long as 3 months ago when it was fully functional. And I've been playing around with that quite extensively to do this kind of work on slide deck templates and how you can create slides using it. So I'm a little bit more experienced there, but I mean, by a matter of months. And so it's not something that, I have deep expertise in specifically this domain, but there's a lot of sort of background knowledge that I might have about using these kinds of tools that I do hope to share with you, and so I can at least demo my workflow. And then I'd love to get tips and make it a little bit interactive so that you can jump in and ask questions, give me tips on what I could be doing better as a part of my process. And then afterwards, we'll do a little exercise where all of you will get to try this out. How many of you now have Claude operating on your desktop? Raise your hand. Okay. Looks like a majority. If you do not yet, I would recommend doing that. And as mentioned, if you sign in here, we'll be able to reimburse you for that for 1 month of the Pro subscription for $20. And try it. So don't be afraid to put in some prompts as you go along, and we'll have an exercise for you to do at the end of the session as well. So let me talk a little bit about what the motivation is for the session today. The motivation is that I have to create a lot of slide decks. As a professor, that's the standard format, for better or worse, for delivering content in classes, and I've done a lot of that over the years. I wouldn't say that it's something I'm particularly good at. So, here's something that I, use for my software engineering class. And you can see it has kind of a basic format or template that I use. And, it's kind of minimal. So I think I try to avoid packing way too much text on any given slide. This gets into that direction. But it's also not super visual or super takeaway heavy. And here's a couple other examples where I have used more images. Here's something from my HCI class, and you can see that this one maybe has a little bit more style, but there's, I will say, a lot of room for improvement. It's also something that, frankly, I don't want to spend a ton of time on. We have a lot of jobs as faculty. We wear many hats. Teaching is one very important one, but creating the slide deck as a part of my teaching is a small part of the job. And it's one that I'm not an expert on. So, if there's something that can help me with that, I'm very interested in that. And so that's where this need arose, and I wanted to try that out, in particular for my most recent course, the AI first version of software engineering that I'm now teaching, to see what's now possible in that domain. And so I can show you, I think, some things that are quite promising. I already use it as a part of that course. They're not flawless, they're not perfect. There's a lot of room for improvement still. That having been said, I find it a very useful tool. So what I want to do today is we've created a little mini site here, which is going to feature the exercises that you're going to be able to do at the end. But I'm going to walk you through going from a pretty basic bare bones SU template deck that's kind of ugly, and how we can then create that with out of the box Claude. So without giving it sort of any prompts or special instructions, and it just kind of creates that using its own coding abilities. So you can create decks that way and just ask it to, give it a whole bunch of text and have it create a deck out of that. And we'll see what that looks like. And so that will be, so our first one here is this sample deck rather. So let me just pull that up so you can see what that looks like. This is actually a template that they provide us with in the School of Engineering that I see used all the time for our senior design projects and all kinds of other things. It's, I think, kind of terrible. And so I created just like a sample deck based on this though. Now it's kind of like deliberately extra ugly even, like the alignment isn't there and there's obviously things that you could even do here that would be better within this somewhat questionable template. There's just a lot of elements here like why does this logo, anyway. But we'll use this for a couple reasons. One, I want to show you sort of the process of going from something like this to something with sort of a higher level of visual fidelity and quality, and what's possible in doing that with Claude. The other reason we're going to use this example deck here, which has some AI Kitchen content, is that it's short. It's only 4 slides, and so that'll prevent some of your token burn while still giving you some of the experience of what this looks like. If I gave you one of my lecture decks that's 30 slides or 50 slides, you will burn through those tokens real fast. So I want you to have a little bit more experience being able to try out different prompts and different ways of using this. All right, so that's the sample deck. So now let's see, how can we get to Claude out of the box? So what I'm going to do now is fire up Claude Desktop.
And throughout the duration of this presentation, if you need any help, feel free to raise your hand and one of us will get to you. So, yeah.
All right, so if you have started in Claude, you should see something like this. Can you raise your hand if you're here with me? Okay, so you have to use the desktop version for this, actually. That's going to be necessary for accessing many of the powers of Claude. Not all of them, actually. Some of them live on the web. Claude Design actually lives on the web. So I think they'll add it to the desktop version soon, but for now, we're going to start here. So yeah, I recommend you get started here. And I just want to show you there's 3 different modes of using Claude. So one is chat. So that's probably what everyone is familiar with right now. That is to say, I can ask it a question here and say something like, I'm presenting to a bunch of students at Santa Clara University as a part of my new AI Kitchen initiative, and what would be a good icebreaker activity for them? So another thing that I'm going to demo as a part of this is that students in my class will know, but I like to talk to my computer like a crazy person. Hello, hello, can you hear me? Ah, let me see. Do this. Let me try it. Hello, hello? Hello, hello, can you hear me? It's registering, it's just not going through my app here. Let me try again. One more time, testing, testing. Here? No, I shouldn't need to do that. Hello, hello. It's not registering. So let me try starting Whisper Flow, which is the tool that I use. So this is one of the dangers of live tutorials. You sometimes encounter things that aren't working. Hello, hello. Is this working now? Okay, so I just had to restart WhisperFlow. So yeah, as mentioned, I talk to my computer like a crazy person now. I find that a lot of these AI tools take a lot of fuzzy or loose or inexact input and can deal with it very, very efficiently. They can, deal with all the ums and ahs and the roundabout ways that you talk that aren't as precise as written language and still make sense of it and be very useful. And it's a much faster way of actually interacting with AI. That is to say, you can actually talk way faster than you can type. And so a very efficient way then of interacting is to use voice as your output and visuals as your input, because you can then consume information with your eyes faster than you could the spoken word or other forms of communication. So voice output, visual input is actually a very efficient way of working with AI that I've come to love. So it's really fundamentally changed my workflow in the past couple months. And then I use Whisper Flow specifically. There's a couple other tools out there, Monologue, and others that you can use. But they have really nice features where you can sort of, communicate to it without it taking you literally. So what I mean is like, give me a turtle emoji. So it understands the intent of what you say. It doesn't type, give me a turtle emoji literally in how you put things or transcribe things into text here. And so that's very useful when you're sort of communicating with this tool as a way of doing voice output. So again, we're now in this first mode, which is the chat mode. Yeah, Lawrence.
What's the tool again, the voice tool?
Oh, so I'm using one called Whisper Flow. There's others like Monologue and some others out there as well. But yeah, good question. Feel free to jump in anytime that you have questions. So it also then keeps a log of everything that you say here in your communications. And you can go back through that if it didn't fill it out in the prompt correctly or something like that. It also learns some of your custom vocabulary over time, et cetera, et cetera. So this is that Whisper Flow tool that I am using. So yeah, we're in this first of the three modes, which is kind of a enhanced chat, perhaps. And so I can just, go back and forth and say things like, give me a joke that I can tell the room of Santa Clara University students who have assembled for my AI Kitchen initiative that is a hands-on space for making things with AI. So there we go. They told me AI Kitchen would be hands-on. Nobody mentioned the hands would be mine doing all the dishes while Claude takes credit for the recipe. So I don't know about the quality of these jokes. Humor, I think, is still a domain where there's much room for improvement from AI. But, it's not terrible. If I were asked to come up with a bunch of jokes on the spot here immediately, I would probably do worse than this. So, I'm also not a professional comedian, though. All right, so that's chat. That's kind of what we have grown familiar with through, I think, ChatGPT being introduced to the world a couple of years ago. And then I want to introduce you to Cowork, which is this second sort of button or icon here. And so this is the one that I tend to live in. I use this all the time for my work. And this one I find is super useful for being able to perform all kinds of sophisticated tasks that require that harness that I mentioned before that makes Claude so powerful. And so it hooks into your file directory, so all of the files on your desktop, and it can write and read files in particular folders that you give it access to. And then it sort of collects information about particular projects in a particular folder. So I have ones here for HCI conferences, a paper that I'm working on, creating my academic CV, projects in my HCI lab, and of course for my software engineering course, and AI Kitchen as well. So you can see then it has access to my AI Kitchen folder here, which has a whole bunch of content that it can read and write to. So it has all that context that's really valuable for making sense of what I'm trying to do on this particular project. Let's see, a couple other notes from my setup here. I basically always select Opus 4.7, which is the most powerful model, because I find that the reasoning capability that it has for almost all tasks is just useful relative to the other models. If you are token constrained, I think 4.6 is a pretty damn good model and will use significantly less tokens than 4.7 will actually. So, you can think about then toggling between those sometimes if you need something that's more sophisticated for a certain reasoning task. Yeah.
I think the switch it might be subject to Sonnet and models. So if you want to switch between them, you're able to.
Yeah, so you can switch between them, and you're right. So there's this Sonnet only usage, and so I think you have a greater allowance there. And so yeah, if you are facing running up against your token limits, then that's a good choice actually, for sure. And it is still a super powerful model. I think that itself came out 2 months ago, right? So it's still pretty cutting edge. Right, so just to finish off going through the 3 different modes that you can use Claude in, the third mode is the Claude Code mode. And so Claude Code can live both here within the desktop app. That's actually where I prefer to use it. Probably the more common way that people use it is through the CLI, the command line interface or terminal. I think if you're not a developer, I wouldn't recommend going that route. If you are a developer, it definitely has some advantages relative to this desktop version. But if you're doing kind of straightforward work like deploying things to the AI Kitchen website, like I was just doing now, and it's pretty straightforward, website with not too many bells and whistles, this is actually perfectly fine, and I think it has a nicer visual interface than using the terminal for my money. So I tend to use this most often. And I just used it, in fact, to publish our little demo site that contains the information about the exercise that you're going to do based on this tutorial. So I literally just pushed 5 minutes ago this slide deck recipes with Claude Design little mini site that you can then use to download all the materials that you will need as a part of the live exercise that follows this tutorial. And it can do that again because it has access to my file directory, and so it can know that I want it to have this card link to my sample deck here and link to my skill that I've created as a part of this exercise. But what I want to work in primarily will be Cowork. And so within Cowork, now let us go ahead and go from that very simple template that was rather ugly provided by the School of Engineering and convert it to something that is generated by Claude. And so what I mean by that is that it will actually use code to generate a PowerPoint presentation. So let's go ahead and show you how that looks. So let's see. I think I'm going to navigate to the kitchen. Actually, you know what? Let's try. It is in here, but I need to just find which folder it's in, because it has access to that folder. So let me see if I can just get it to navigate there myself. Okay, I'm doing the live demo for our AI Kitchen session on slide deck recipes. I want you to go in our shared directory and look for the first SCU template deck and show how you convert that to a deck using your tools and code. And this deck should be one that doesn't use my SCU presentation skill that I've created. And it doesn't use my image generation skill either. So just do it as Claude would kind of create a PowerPoint deck out of the box without much custom instruction. Okay, so I'm going to put that kind of large, messy prompt in here, and we'll see how it does. You can see that it's going to need to do a number of things. It's going to need to identify, based on that verbal description, what deck I'm talking about. I can show you, how it lives in the folder here. It's this one here, this original SCU template. I've already sort of gone through this exercise once in preparation, just in case anything fails miserably in this demo. I'll be able to draw upon these decks that I created a couple hours ago. But hopefully we can, do this live, and it'll actually go from this original SCU template to creating this Claude out-of-the-box deck for you, and we'll see how that unfolds. So it's going to need to navigate and find this based on that verbal description, and then it's going to need to use its tools to actually create the deck as a part of that. So let's give it a whirl. And you can see it also gives me some traces here, so descriptions of what it's doing as it's working on this particular task. So as anticipated, it's going to work on finding files first. And if it can't find it, it'll come back to me and tell me that it's not sure, or maybe it'll actually misidentify it, and I'll see it in the trace, and then we can stop it. But I'm going to bet 80% it gets this right. It's also the kind of task where the stakes are not that high. If it finds the wrong file, no big deal. I'll just start over or give it the correct instructions. So it says, I found the SCU deck. Let me look at it and create a fresh out-of-the-box version using basic PowerPoint skills. No SCU skill, no image gen. Those are the custom skills that I'm going to show you later that I've created. Okay, and now it's going to ask, I think, for request to that file path. And I'll go ahead and click always allow. And that's not the right deck. And then it's going to load some tools to try and create this deck. This is an unusual number of permissions. Let me change this. I don't want it to ask for all of those. And try it for this task. So it depends a little bit on the stakes. So I think they actually just changed this interface. So that's why maybe it was a little bit different from what I was used to. And it depends a little bit on the sort of stakes of the task as to whether I'm going to have it require permissions all the time or not. So let's go ahead and see if it does this. Oh, interesting. So it's actually trying to use a different technique from what I have seen it use before. It's actually trying to open up PowerPoint on my screen over here. So I don't, let me see, is that? Oh, well, let's see. Let's see what we got. So now I can go to the folder that it has access to. Okay, yeah, so you can see this was created today at 3:16 p.m. So let's see what you got. Oh man, that's pretty ugly. It doesn't even, that's even worse than what, so I will say, I didn't expect it to be great. I expected it to be better than that. I wonder what happened because I think maybe my instructions told it to be like too rudimentary and not use any of its skills. Because I'll show you the previous and sort of normal version of what I was expecting was something more like this deck, which is not amazing, but it's not terrible, right? Like at least this has like the content in a readable sort of format that's like formatted in an okay way. It's not particularly like on brand or visually appealing or anything like that, but like I wouldn't be ashamed or run out of the room if I presented this at some occasion, right? If I showed up with this deck, I would be pretty embarrassed, right, about what I'm doing here. So I'm gonna unpack a little bit, just ask it why it did that, and I'm curious. Do you have a thought there?
Yeah, so you don't have to run any codes, and in normal chat, it can also run from your notebooks. And then, because I also did a slide deck in my presentation.
Yeah.
I had an example using SE code. I think like, kind of a little today to follow, so then I was able to this control from the slide that I made.
So that's where we're going. That's where we're going. Yeah, exactly. So we're going to go to like how you can get to something this is like the demo of like, if I just ask it to do this without giving it like that kind of context and prompting, like what do we get, right? But you're right that it needs more information if you want it to actually look like something that's on brand for SU. So I'm curious here though, you created a pretty ugly deck. Why was it so ugly? Normally, actually, you're able to create decks that at least like don't overflow off the page and have a little bit of style, even if it isn't like the style for my university. What process did you use, and is it your normal process for creating slide decks? So I actually find it quite useful to go back and forth and understand like what's happening with the system, and usually it can give me actually a reasonable explanation. So let's see what it says. Because I am using Opus 4.7, the responses are sometimes a little slower than what you might get for other models, but I think it's a fair trade-off. Okay, so it's giving me this whole explanation for, it sort of went overboard, something went wrong with its PowerPoint MCP tool call, and then it tried to create something with like absolutely no template, which isn't actually its normal process. So I want to actually like have more of an honest baseline for what it would create most of the time if we didn't give it the sort of styling guidance that we're going to go forward with to create something better. Yeah, redo it so that the demo contrast is fair here. And we'll let it take a shot at that and see what we get as a result this time. How do you actually generate the deck? So another thing that you can do in Cowork that I like is that you can queue prompts. So in the chat, normally it's like 1, 1, 1, 1. But here, if it's like running some kind of a existing tool that takes, or process that takes a little while, you can queue the next prompt and it'll sort of view that in parallel and see whether it's going to respond to that immediately. And sometimes it'll just like answer that on the side. Sometimes it'll answer it afterwards, but you don't have to wait to sort of go back and forth with it a little bit in that manner. And so that's quite useful, I find, as a way of interacting with the system. You can also throw in things there that are like, wait, no, you have to remember this part of the assignment, I forgot to tell you this. And it'll usually catch it in time to adjust sort of the course of reasoning that it's working on. Yeah.
I see on the right-hand side of the screen that there's like a .md file. Could you explain what that is?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The MD is a sort of set of master instructions that you can give to a particular project that give it a little bit of context about what you're doing as a part of this project, and also can give it some relevant instructions. And so here in particular, actually, I tell it that there's also this URL and website that it often should be updating if I want to change things there. I probably could have more extensive instructions here. This, I think I set up at the very beginning of this initiative, and probably I should update it to give it a little bit more sort of master instructions about this particular project. So that's a useful thing to give it, like a set of instructions that apply across an entire project that you might be working on. Yeah.
I apologize, I came in a bit late. Is there an instruction manual I can find to go along with what you're teaching?
No, it's a live tutorial, so
I guess I'll just try to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, it is recorded.
Yeah.
It is recorded, so you can view it again
Awesome.
later.
Yes.
And then some Tripti or Tiffany can maybe help out if you're stuck.
Sounds good, thank you.
Quick question, Blake. Where the recording can be uploaded?
We'll probably post it to the site.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome, great to know. Thanks.
All right, so let's see if we did any better. All right, so you have a rebuilt deck. And to your question, how I actually generate the deck. There are two paths I can take, and I tried both today. The PowerPoint MCP server, it opens the actual Microsoft PowerPoint app on your Mac. Oh, interesting. So it was interesting that it did it today because I haven't seen it use that before. I'm much more used to it using a Python script, so actually code inside of the sort of application here, which has basically access to all of the terminal tools to generate the deck. And so this is the route that I'm much more used to. And also this route failed again today, so I'm not quite sure why it's trying that. I wouldn't recommend that. Probably I might give it instructions here to always use path 2 in the future. So it never opens PowerPoint at all. It just generates a bunch of code that is what is used to create the PowerPoint deck. All right, so now it said it actually had a little bit of style that it defined, blah, 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 blah. And it has kind of a generic deck feel. So let's see how that actually looks. Okay, oops, I think I need to quit and get rid of this so that new one. All right, so now we're talking, right? I mean, like, I would not be wholly ashamed to present this somewhere if I had to, as a kind of, very generic but minimally competent sort of deck. You know what? I think it's also cheating a little bit. It's already using a little bit of my presentation skill style. Like particularly this card is very recognizable actually for my presentation style. So because I'm creating this in the same project, sometimes its memory kind of like overlaps and it's drawing upon this. So I bet if all of you do this exercise, and you should, and use the awful starter deck that I shared with all of you, you will get results that look a little bit different than this because it doesn't already have the knowledge of this presentation skill that I'm going to demo in the near future that actually uses something suspiciously similar to this. That having been said, we can do a lot better, and we can certainly be a lot more on Bronco brand for Santa Clara University than this miserable deck. So let's see how we can do that. What I'm going to do is describe the process that I used to create a skill that enables me to create decks that are a lot more sort of on brand and on point for Santa Clara University content. So let me see. The whole process took quite some time, actually, so I'm not going to demo the whole process of creating that skill. But what I have done is I've packaged up that skill and then provided it to you as something that you can download and then use. So first, I'm going to talk about the process of creating the skill. Then I'm going to show you the use of this skill, or the content of the skill, and then the use of the skill. And that'll be sort of informative for you to be able to see what this is about. So let me see. I think it was this thread here where I went back and forth a little bit, or for quite some time, and had it create a skill. So let's see. Okay, so yeah, I had a whole conversation that unfortunately our first guest had to cancel, so I stepped in here to talk about something that I'm very interested in, and I went back and forth with it about what I could do in terms of my own AI workflow that would be interesting. Let me see where I get to the part where I was actually creating my skill. Okay. Let's see. Maybe actually this was, sorry, this is the wrong thread. Let me find the correct thread in my project here. Let's see. Let's try searching because I can't locate it right now. I find actually, unfortunately, the search function is not always great, but in this case, actually, it might get us the right thing. So review and package SU presentation skill. So this is a skill that I actually created. Okay. And what I wanted to show you is, this was packaging the skill. Okay, maybe it's going to take me a little while to locate this, so I'm going to, oh yeah, that's right, because I did it within another project, so that's why. I can also describe it to you a little bit too. So the basic idea is that you can put in a whole bunch of information or context about what your organization or your goal is for your template for, say, slides, like your brand colors and what the design guidelines are. And then it can analyze that and come up with examples of what you might want. And you can give it feedback. And then over time, you can have it write down a series of steps it can use to generate a slide deck recipe that conforms to that particular design style. And so here's the key prompt, I think, that I used here. I wanted to go about creating a template that I can use for Santa Clara University presentations. And I had it look through the following links. And I gave it a whole bunch of context here that it was able to gather. So this includes like a website here that is our marketing and communication brand resources. So it could crawl all of that. That includes actually, I found we, believe it or not, have a whole GitHub repository with a design system for the university And so that was very convenient. It was able to access that as a part of its input. That includes like things like logos and such. It also includes, some other like sample decks that I provided here that it was able to ingest and make sense of and understand sort of what the different directions are for how you follow SU style. So for instance, another one here is this design system here. So this will give it a bunch of information about like colors, right? What colors it should use as part of the deck, for instance. And so it can ingest all of that into creating its templates. Okay, and so we went back and forth for quite a while, and it created then a template, a set of 13 slides, and it had me review those, and I gave it a bunch of feedback, and we iterated on that to get to something that I was reasonably pleased with, so that it could then package that up into a skill. I want to show you one other thing that it did that I thought was really interesting. Let me see if I can find it. At one point, it created a whole website where it showed the before and after PowerPoints and PowerPoints using different, it's not loading it, maybe it's not saved in its memory anymore. Okay, but I'll just describe what it did here, which I thought was really interesting as an evaluation tool, is it put side-by-side versions of the decks that it was able to generate with and without the skill, and then also, so package that up as a website with some JS, and I could respond on that website as to what I liked or didn't like about how I was now using the skill. And then it could take that feedback here inside of this session and use that to improve the skill. And so that all went into creating my final draft of the skill. So now what is a skill? A skill is actually like a repeatable process that the tool, in this case Claude, can leverage in order to achieve some desirable result. They're also transferable in the sense that they're just an MD file, a text file, that literally describes the process to use to create whatever it is or follow whatever process it is that you're interested in. So let me show you where that is, because it's not that fancy. And we'll take a look. Actually, no, I think they moved it from settings to customize to skills. And we have my SU presentation skill. So you can see that's actually just this file here. And so this is my SU presentation skill. Normally, actually, it's just like an MD file. This is how the machine would read it, but we can render it a little bit more nicely since it's a markdown file this way. And it gives it a set of instructions. So SU presentation skill. This skill generates on-brand Santa Clara University presentations using PowerPoint JS, so code. And it handles two workflows. It can take a new deck and create a PowerPoint from scratch in this nice template or format. And it can also convert a deck. So take an existing deck, like the example that we're going to use today, and convert that into this style. And it instructs the session to do these things. Read references brand deck rules.md. So this is all packaged within this presentation here, within this skill actually. So you can see there's a number of like sub-files here that it's created. It's also created some assets and has some references here that you can, like it tells it to read this first, right? So it tells you here that it's collected a whole bunch of information about brand deck rules, right? So these are like the colors, the typography that it should use, et cetera, that are now all packaged up as a part of my SU presentation skill. And then after it's done reading through all those references, it has an actual workflow here So it says plan the slide deck sequence, write the script. It has a bunch of like bugs that often came up that I gave it, feedback on specifically. Yeah.
On your initial prompt, what if Claude goes in the completely wrong direction? How would you be able to pivot from there and point it in a better direction?
I guess I would start by just trying verbally in the way that I would respond to a human, which is like, no, that's like totally the wrong direction, Tiffany. Like, I didn't want you to literally recreate the Santa Clara University deck. I wanted you to, build and improve upon it in this way. And then see if it, responds better to that. So sort of clarifying the instructions and almost just like trying again. If it still doesn't succeed, then you maybe need to rethink your whole approach and think about like, is the model even capable of this level of a task? Do I need to use a different model? Is this something AI shouldn't be doing? So those are all, valid questions. Yeah. All right. So what is the upshot of having worked with AI to create this like detailed document? And to be clear, I didn't write this, right? Like I went back and forth to give it some guidance on what I liked and I didn't like in the PowerPoint, but I didn't write this in the way that it carefully wrote all of the sort of instructions here. The upshot is we can now invoke this skill with a slash command. And so what we are able to do there is open up a new session and say, okay, now as a part of my live demo of my slide deck recipes session, I want to take that original SCU template deck and use my SCU presentation skill to recreate it or convert it into a on-brand SCU presentation. So let's go ahead and try that. Yeah.
I had one question regarding prompt. So when you're using SCU presentation skills, are there any keywords that we need to keep in mind to ensure that those skills are getting implemented? Or it's just going to be plain English just mentioning SCU presentation skills? Yeah,
it's a good question. So like you can like type out the skill to like do slash, and then it opens up all the skills that you have installed. And I can use my SCU presentation here and invoke it that way. But even a kind of fuzzy invocation in the way that I did it here as just a voice chat, right, where I talked about my SCU presentation skill, it showed earlier here in the traces, used a skill. And I think it's using the right one. Yeah, so it's using the skill SCU presentation you can see here. So that is the correct skill. In this case, it wasn't able to figure out from my instructions what the original deck is that I wanted it to convert. So it's going to ask me for clarification. I don't think actually any of these is the right deck. I think it's looking in the wrong folder, because I've now, like it's just been generating tons of files actually in this directory. So sometimes your directory can get a little bit messy. I'll show you what I mean here. So what I mean by a messy directory is I have granted it access to, I think, this entire folder. And it's now working in here. And it has generated a whole bunch of kind of junk or things that like I only needed as like one-offs or something like that. So I could also ask it to clean it up and structure it. I just haven't bothered to do it. And I think it's like trying to see if these decks are the ones. When in fact, I actually wanted to access this original deck here. So I'll just give it instructions to do that again. So it's actually this deck, which is in the root directory. So let's see if it can do this now. And I realize I'm running a little bit long, so I might try and go a little bit faster through the final sessions here, just so that we have some time for the actual like hands-on exercise for all of you, and a little time for project work as well. So maybe the issue is it thinks it doesn't have access to that folder. So what I can do is just grant it access to that folder again here in case it didn't have that access. I just added, I think, the root directory. So try that. It's in the slide deck recipes folder. So it's kind of funny that it worked last time, it didn't work this time. Sometimes you do just have to go back and forth with it a little bit. Maybe there's better ways of managing the file directory, but at least in this case, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just going to ask it, what's your process for doing conversion? I'm curious because it was converting the prior deck to a PDF, so I'm wondering like if that's not a very readable format for it to just work directly. Okay, yeah, so you can understand a little bit more of its process if you want, and then pull reusable assets. Yeah, keep going and actually use my presentation skill to build the deck now. While that's happening, I'm going to go ahead and show you also Claude Design, which is the newest service that Claude just launched a week ago. And I'll show you also how that worked. So again, yeah, this is something that you access through the web right now. They haven't integrated it into the desktop app, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, so this is now a web service. And the idea here is that this is designed or created explicitly for the purpose of having these kinds of design systems that can, create on-brand content. And so I tried using that as well. And we went through kind of a similar process of creating a template of different slide decks. And this is what it came up with. So you can see that it has a much better looking kind of cover. And let me see if I can find the overall deck to show you. Okay, so here it has a whole bunch of like placeholder slides that it can then fill in content with that look, I would say, pretty good. So this would definitely be like a significant level above anything that I would create myself in terms of just the typography, the design style, the layout, etc. And so those are kind of useful as having templates for something that you could use as something that comes out of your design skill. And so we will take a look at that in just a second, but let's finish and return to this and see if we can actually generate our PowerPoint here. So let's see, it took a little time, but let's see what we get. I'll go ahead and open up this version. Okay, so here is, in the sort of SU style with that presentation skill, our AI Kitchen deck. I would say it's decent. It definitely has some of the SU feel. It's got the logo in there. It's got the colors right. I think the typography is on point. It doesn't do gradation, so this like transition between these two panels is a bit basic, I would say, in contrast to, for instance, what we had like here. This looks a little bit fancier in terms of being able to do a gradation or flow between the two sort of sides of the slide deck. But this is already, like, I would say, a good 2 miles ahead of what I normally use. And so those of you in my software engineering course might recognize this because this is a format I've started using now to regenerate some of my content in the deck there. It was also able to preserve this QR code, which I think should work, based on the one that I had in that sample deck. It works. And so, that's pretty useful as a way of being able to use this presentation skill to create a deck that, again, I would say is pretty decent. Still room for improvement, but this, I find, is already hugely useful in my own everyday process. Now let's take a look at what we can also do in Claude Design. And we'll give it actually the same challenge. I don't know how well this is going to work because the first time that I actually had it create a design system, what I found is that it created it so that it was geared towards creating HTML sites as decks, not PowerPoints. Because it can do a lot more with HTML in certain respects, like do this sort of gradation, which is not as easy to do in PowerPoint. And so then when I tried to ask it to create a PowerPoint deck, it created a bunch of stuff that didn't actually look very good because it was trying to apply a sort of HTML paradigm to creating a deck. So I'll just show you what that looked like. And then in the meantime, I've tried to ask it to redo the skill so that it does a better job. So this was my first out-of-the-box result with Claude Design from using it, but it was geared towards creating HTML decks, and I used it then to create a PowerPoint deck. I didn't know that it was going to try and create it as an HTML deck, which is not what I wanted. And so you can see it's trying to do this fancy gradation and doing kind of what looks pretty janky, right? I would say as an outcome here. I wouldn't want this. I think the 2-panel design is better than this that we had in that basic presentation skill. So this is going to be a live experiment, and we're going to see whether the new version that I just had it spin up performs any better. So let us see. Going to give it my out of the deck box and tell it to convert this to a PowerPoint in my design system style. So that's going to be the last thing that I'm going to show you as a part of the tutorial today. I've already gone well over time, so sorry about that. But then the next thing that I want you to be able to do is try it out yourself. So here's your URL. Go to the AIKitchen.org slide-recipes.html, and that's where you can get your starter kit. So you don't actually need either of these things, but you will need these things. So you will need the sample deck that I've been using. You will need not necessarily this Claude out of the box, that's just a comparison. You will need my SU brand skill, because you'll need to download and install that skill. I promise you I haven't inserted any malware into that. You generally want to install skills from a trusted source. And that skill, you can then invoke and have it regenerate this sample deck into something that is on point for SU presentations. And then if you don't like it, you should modify it. You should do better than I did. And tell me how you changed it. You could even like reshare the skill and improve it. You might have a much better visual eye than I do and have tips for what you can do better. And I would love to hear about that. So that is what we'll do as the exercise today. And Tiffany and Tripti will be willing to help you out a little bit, and I'll circulate around the room as well. Mm-hmm. So we'll spend maybe 30 minutes or so working on that. And then we'll also have time to just chat about any other projects that you have in this domain of AI and connect with other students who are like-minded. Let's go back and see, though, if it's finished here. Not yet. So what we can do is, let's go ahead and, since I've been talking for way too long today, normally I don't want to talk this long, let's go ahead and have all of you get started on those actual slide deck recipes and practice this a little bit. Try it hands down for yourself within Claude. And then when this finishes up, I'll just display it here again for everyone to see. And we'll see how we did. So with that, yeah, Taka, question?
What's that slide deck URL again?
Yeah, let me make it sort of big here, but it is this. It doesn't help. The AIKitchen.org/slide-recipes.html. So
Do you want to paste it from you on our slide?
I'll just put it up here.
Yeah.
So that's the URL that you can follow to get to the mini site that has all the content that you might want to try out this skill as a part of your exercise today. Any other questions about the workflow or comments? Yeah,
I don't know if I missed it, but the skills you used with the Claude Cowork, right?
That's right.
The same skills with design too.
So no, actually, from what I can tell, and I was sort of going back and forth and asking it about this, but the Claude Design system doesn't use skills. So it just, I guess, has the templates here, which is kind of like a skill. It's a skill for only a specific purpose, right? In that it's only for design systems, and then it uses that to generate decks. Skills can be much more expansive. They can do all sorts of other things too. And so those then live in your desktop version. And they also can be used in other applications like Cursor. Codex has its own version for the ChatGPT version. And you can transfer the skills between them because they're just text files, right? They're MD files. So you can reuse them even if you're using a different tool later on. So let's take a look now that this is finished and see how we did. I'm interested. Did we do better than our sort of janky gradated deck? You know what? This is actually promising. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here is your final deck. You're allowed to applaud now. So it's not bad. This is pretty good. I'm pretty pleased, actually. There's like some room for improvement. I don't think the 24th should overlap onto the second part of this line, but then I can also go in and edit it manually if I want, because it's actually a PowerPoint. So, this is pretty useful as a way of creating a decent looking deck that's kind of on point with the SU brand. One other thing that I'll mention very quickly as a part of this demo that I won't cover in detail is I also created another skill, so you can create lots of different skills. And that one is my image gen skill. So Claude doesn't actually create images. Some of the other multimodal LLMs like ChatGPT can create images natively. And so I wanted it to be able to, when it creates these presentations, to be able to generate images as a part of its PowerPoint slides, right? And so I actually then had it generate images from text prompts using Google's Gemini image models, which I think are some of the best out there right now, and then save them as PNG files in the current working directory. And then when I invoke both of these at the same time, it actually inserts them into the deck. And so I can show you an example of what I created using that turned out pretty well, I think. And maybe that provides some inspiration. I just shared it with our department chair, so that's probably going to be the easiest way for me to find it. Sure, I have them here, so let me find them. Okay. So this is just using the skill. This isn't using, so these are actually what I use now for my lecture slides, which are better than the lecture slides that I showed you earlier, I think. And let me show you the ones that actually generated the images as a part of them. These are still copied over from my old slides. Oh, yeah, here. So this was actually able to generate like images that match with the style and the content of my slides, pulling from the Gemini API and then inserting them into the deck. And because you are calling an external API, it has a little bit of a cost. I think it's like roughly 3 cents per image that gets generated as a part of your slides here. So long as you're not doing it at a massive scale, totally fine.
How did you integrate the API to it, like the Gemini API? Did you just do it by prompt? The one which you showed, like how did you integrate that?
Yeah, so I just told it, I want to create a skill that allows you to do this.
Yeah.
And then it said, okay, to do that, you need to create an API key. So you need to go to Gemini. I paid $25 to have a bunch of like some money on my account there. Mm-hmm. It generates an API key. I give that API key to Claude. It stores that securely locally. And then it can, so I think in the image gen skill, it describes how it generates so first I think passes the context to Gemini via the API. Yeah. And tells it like, okay, I want a deck or an image for Gaze Reader, this fictional product. Mm-hmm. And it should be an image of a woman breathing into her laptop or talking into her laptop in watercolor in this sort of color scheme. Gemini generates the image. Claude saves it locally to my file directory and then inserts it into the PDF or the PowerPoint at the appropriate part. So, okay. Yeah.
For those who might not be familiar, what is an API?
Yeah. It's basically a protocol that different services or applications can use to talk to each other. And for a given specified input, it returns a certain output. And so in this case, it takes like a text input of some kind of a prompt and returns an image. And you can set certain parameters, like I want the image to be this large or in this format, and then it will return that for you. It'll also check against things like is there enough budget, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the basics of using APIs. So lots of application services will connect to each other using APIs, particularly if you're like trying to connect multiple services to each other. So that's one of the things that we cover in my software engineering course. All right, so with that, thank you all very much. And I'm excited to see, how you all go through this exercise, and stick around to talk about some different projects. And hopefully I will see you all again in 1 week when Luis will be presenting on how to think like an engineer with some kind of a hands-on tutorial for that too. Thank you.
Yeah, so now feel free to experiment with Claude Design, and also I'd highly encourage you all to go around and talk to each other, explore what projects you might be interested in, and try forming your groups. We do all of our communication on Discord, but if you'd like to do it off of Discord via email and whatnot, we would appreciate if you could CC one of us as well, or just keep us in the loop about your progress, and we'll give you access to a GitHub repository and whatnot for you to base your project on. So, yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, really?
Should we what?
I think we created a drive to for people